Imagine walking through the ruins of ancient Egypt and discovering a story that refuses to disappear. Ancient stories speak of enormous beings, extraordinary rulers, and people whose size seemed beyond ordinary humans. But were giants ever truly part of Egyptian history? At first, the evidence appears overwhelming. Colossal statues, towering temples, and stones so massive they still challenge the imagination. More than 4,500 years later, the Great Pyramid still makes ordinary human scale feel strangely inadequate. At sunrise, the pyramids rise from the desert like mountains shaped by human hands, inviting speculation about the people who built them. Ancient Egypt created pyramids, temples, obelisks, and statues on a scale that could make their makers seem superhuman. When a monument overwhelms the senses, memory often enlarges the people behind it. Stone can become the birthplace of legend. Before the mystery grows, one boundary matters. No accepted archaeological evidence proves a race of literal giant humans in ancient Egypt. The first possibility is also the most ordinary. Ancient Egypt may have encountered exceptionally tall individuals, remembered because they stood apart. Human height has always varied. Rare individuals can be dramatically taller than their neighbors without belonging to a separate giant race. Skeletal remains can tell researchers about nutrition, disease, ancestry, and unusual growth, but isolated tall individuals do not establish a vanished civilization of giants. The distinction is crucial. An unusually tall person may be real, while the larger story built around that person may be something else entirely. The second possibility is symbolic. Egyptian art often enlarged figures not to describe anatomy, but to communicate status, power, or divinity. In many Egyptian scenes, the largest figure is the most important, not necessarily the tallest person in the room. When ancient artists changed scale, they were often ranking people symbolically. A giant image could represent importance rather than biology. A towering god, king, or guardian could make power visible. The image was designed to impress, not to provide a medical record. Egyptian mythology included powerful beings, hybrid creatures, and divine guardians. These figures may later have been remembered simply as giants. A supernatural figure in a story cannot be counted as historical evidence without independent support, even when the story is ancient. The third possibility begins with the monuments themselves. Later generations may have imagined enormous builders because ordinary people seemed too small for the task. The Great Pyramid required organization, planning, transport, and labor on an astonishing scale. Without that context, the achievement can look supernatural. Archaeology points toward organized workers, skilled craftsmen, engineers, and administrators, not a hidden army of giants. The real explanation may be less sensational but more remarkable. Coordinated human labor transformed planning and patience into monuments that outlasted empires. Stories about giants survive because they offer a simple answer to an unsettling question. How could ordinary people create extraordinary things? Across generations, uncertainty invites imagination. A missing explanation becomes a story, and the story becomes a memory that feels older than evidence. The transformation can happen in stages. A monument is built, its methods are forgotten, and later storytellers enlarge the people behind it. Perhaps the enduring mystery is not whether giants walked through Egypt, but why human memory repeatedly creates them around the greatest ruins. The evidence does not justify a literal giant race, yet it leaves room to study exceptional individuals, symbolic figures, and evolving legends. The mystery rests on three possibilities: exceptional people, symbolic beings, and legends born from monuments too impressive to explain. A compelling mystery should create wonder without turning speculation into fact. The unanswered question is powerful precisely because the evidence remains incomplete. The next time you see a colossal statue or pyramid, look beyond the legend. Its stones preserve planning, labor, belief, and human ingenuity across centuries. Tombs, texts, bones, and monuments each preserve fragments of the past. Together, they may challenge the legend or deepen the mystery. The most responsible conclusion is not belief or dismissal, but investigation. Follow the evidence, question the legend, and leave room for discovery. Ancient Egypt's monuments are real, its stories are powerful, and the boundary between memory and myth remains hauntingly difficult to see. But there is one question that makes the mystery even stranger. If giants never existed, why do stories about enormous beings appear again and again throughout the ancient world? Across Egypt, artists filled temples, tombs, and monuments with figures whose size seems to defy ordinary human proportions. What did that visual language mean? To the modern eye, some Egyptian artwork appears to show enormous rulers standing beside tiny humans. But ancient Egyptian artists were not necessarily documenting physical height. Size could represent power, authority, importance, and divine status. This convention is known as hierarchical scale. The more important the figure, the more space and visual prominence that figure receives. Egyptian images were not casual snapshots. Their composition followed a visual grammar designed to make social and cosmic order immediately legible to every viewer. A pharaoh represented much larger than servants or enemies was being shown as the dominant force in the scene, not necessarily as a person of impossible physical height. In a temple relief, a towering king could embody political authority, military victory, and a sacred relationship with the gods all at once. The same royal figure might appear as commander, worshipper, ritual actor, and protector of cosmic order, depending entirely on the surrounding scene. Size was only one cue. Crowns, weapons, gestures, placement, and contact with divine figures also shaped how ancient viewers understood a composition. Temple reliefs placed royal power into stone, where processions, offerings, battles, and ceremonies reinforced the ordered world Egypt wished to present to every visitor. When kings appear beside gods, the image can suggest ritual legitimacy or divine favor. It does not automatically describe the physical bodies of either figure. Egyptian art often organized reality as a hierarchy. Gods above kings, kings above officials, officials above servants, and enemies placed outside the desired order. The striking size difference invites a literal reading, but the image may be communicating social distance, authority, and cosmic significance instead. These compositions should not be treated as ancient measurement charts. Their purpose was often to define relationships, not record height with scientific precision. A symbolic giant is a figure enlarged by artistic convention. Powerful because of status, divinity, victory, or authority rather than unusual biology. Egyptian mythology also described gods, monsters, protective beings, and supernatural forces whose enormous appearance belongs to a mythic and religious world. A supernatural figure looming over a city or temple dramatizes danger, protection, or cosmic power. Such imagery is not automatically evidence of a biological species. To investigate carefully, we must separate mythological giants from symbolic giants, and separate both from physically large humans. These are three distinct categories. Mythological giants belong to narratives about gods, monsters, guardians, and forces beyond ordinary human life. Their scale is part of the story's dramatic language. Symbolic giants are created by artistic composition. Their size tells the viewer who commands, who matters most, or who stands closest to the divine realm. Physically large humans are a different question entirely. Unusual stature would require evidence from securely documented remains, not only from an image's visual proportions. The difficulty arises when symbolic images are detached from their artistic context and treated as eyewitness reports of a lost population of physically enormous people. A temple relief can reveal ideology. A myth can reveal cultural imagination. A skeleton can reveal anatomy. None should automatically substitute for the others. Imagine a mythic figure towering over an ancient city, its shadow crossing pylons and rooftops. That scene conveys awe and cosmic power, not a documented historical event. Torch-lit chambers, towering statues, and desert horizons make ancient Egypt feel larger than life. But cinematic atmosphere must not be mistaken for archaeological proof. Could stories of supernatural beings have later been interpreted as stories of literal giants? It is a compelling question, but interpretation must remain separate from proof. The artwork strongly supports the use of scale to communicate status, authority, divinity, victory, and social order across many centuries and many kinds of scenes. The artwork alone cannot establish that Egyptian rulers, servants, or mythic beings were physically enormous. For that claim, independent physical evidence is required. A responsible reading combines artistic convention with archaeology, comparative context, and careful attention to what the surviving evidence actually says and what it does not. This does not make the mystery disappear. It makes the question sharper. Which giant figures are symbolic, which are mythological, and what evidence could support a physical claim? To move from visual interpretation to human biology, we have to examine burial sites, skeletal remains, excavation records, and the limits of what each can actually tell us. That shift takes us away from dramatic statues and towering temple reliefs and toward contested claims about remains, measurements, preservation, and interpretation. But artwork is not the only reason people believe giants may have existed in Egypt. Some researchers point to human remains, and this is where the mystery becomes much more controversial. At an excavation in ancient Egypt, every fragment can change the story. But can a burial site prove that a civilization of giants once existed? We begin inside a real archaeological excavation. Brushes clear sediment, notes record each layer, and fragile remains are exposed without disturbing their context. Have archaeologists ever discovered human skeletons in Egypt that were truly gigantic? The answer requires separating unusual biology from extraordinary claims. Humans naturally vary in height. Most people cluster around an average, while a small number are exceptionally short or exceptionally tall. An unusually tall individual can be real, healthy, and fully human. A remarkable measurement alone is not evidence of a separate population. Extreme height can come from ordinary variation, inherited traits, or medical conditions. The bones must be measured before any explanation is accepted. Gigantism is a real biological phenomenon. It results when excess growth hormone affects the body before the growth plates close, producing extraordinary stature. A skeleton may show unusual stature, altered proportions, or signs of disease. Those clues help scientists reconstruct a person's life without turning them into a legend. A scientifically accurate comparison shows scale, proportion, and anatomy. An exceptionally tall human skeleton remains recognizably human from skull to foot. A very tall skeleton does not automatically prove the existence of a separate race of giants. Extraordinary conclusions require extraordinary evidence. Photographs can distort scale. Camera distance, missing bones, display angles, and nearby objects can all make a normal discovery look enormous. A single femur or an isolated skull is not a complete skeleton. Estimating height from fragments requires established formulas, careful assumptions, and stated uncertainty. Now imagine the sensational newspaper headline: "Giant skeleton discovered in Egypt." The wording feels definitive, but the evidence behind it may be missing entirely. A cautious note about unusual remains can become a dramatic article, then a social post, and finally a repeated claim that sounds like established history. Online mythology often depends on an image without a site number, excavation record, museum accession, or named scientific publication to verify it. Some giant skeleton images are digitally altered. Others show ordinary human remains photographed with misleading perspective, or even unrelated objects entirely. To test a claim, investigators return to the excavation itself. They ask where the remains were found, in which stratigraphic layer, and beside which artifacts. Scientists measure long bones, compare proportions, estimate stature, and document the condition of every fragment. The method matters as much as the number. Burial context can reveal whether remains belong together, whether the grave was disturbed, and how the person was treated by their community at the time of death. Ceramics, tools, inscriptions, and offerings can anchor a burial in time and place. They do not prove giant ancestry, but they do test the historical setting. Scientific dating methods help establish when a burial occurred. A precise date is valuable because it prevents a modern story from being projected into the ancient past. Other specialists should be able to inspect the measurements, review the context, repeat the analysis, and challenge the interpretation before any claim becomes credible. Legitimate archaeology requires physical remains, precise measurements, burial context, scientific dating, and independent verification by researchers who were not part of the original claim. A photograph, an internet story, or a mysterious report is not enough. Without verifiable records, the claim remains a story rather than a discovery. The contrast is clear. Internet mythology asks you to be impressed first. Scientific archaeology asks you to inspect the evidence step by step. Researchers compare bones with human reference samples. They look for consistent proportions, signs of pathology, preservation effects, and confirmation that separate pieces truly belong together. A credible find has a traceable chain of custody: field notes, photographs, catalog numbers, conservation records, and a repository where other scholars can examine the material. Ask 3 simple questions. Where were the remains found? When did the person live? And how was height estimated? Weak claims usually collapse at one of these points. The evidence may support an exceptionally tall individual, perhaps affected by gigantism or another condition. That is fascinating biology, but it is not proof of a lost civilization of giants. Ancient Egypt still presents a genuine wonder. How ordinary people organized labor, materials, engineering, and time on a scale that continues to astonish the modern world. The monuments do not require a hidden race of giants to be remarkable. Their true story may be even more impressive: coordinated human skill sustained across many generations. Yet one mystery remains. Even if there were no civilization of giants, how did ordinary humans build monuments so enormous that they still appear impossible to us? Ancient Egypt did something extraordinary. It turned human rulers into mountains of stone, monuments meant to outlast every living generation. Across the Theban plain, the colossi of Memnon rise above the landscape. Their scale transforms a royal image into an experience of overwhelming presence. Each seated figure stood roughly 18 meters high. Beside them, modern visitors appear small enough to vanish beneath the knees of stone. Ramesses II commissioned colossal statues throughout Egypt. His image appeared not merely as a portrait, but as a permanent declaration of kingship. A normal portrait shows a person. A colossal portrait changes the message. The ruler seems larger than ordinary human limits, and therefore harder to challenge. For an Egyptian audience, enormous scale communicated royal authority. The pharaoh was the center of government, ritual, law, and the stability of the land. Pharaohs were also connected with the gods. Colossal images placed human rulership within a sacred framework, suggesting that cosmic order flowed through the king. These statues were political statements in stone. They occupied temples, gateways, and ceremonial spaces where subjects, foreigners, and rival rulers could not ignore them. Stone offered a language of eternity. A living ruler would die, but the carved likeness could continue standing, receiving offerings and embodying memory. Immortality was not only a distant promise. Through monumental images, the king remained symbolically present, active in ritual, and visible to future generations. Colossal scale did several jobs at once. It commanded attention, expressed sacred status, and anchored the king's memory in the physical world. Before a statue could inspire awe, workers faced a harder question. How could a massive block of stone be separated, shaped, and moved at all? Quarrymen studied the rock carefully. Natural layers and fractures helped them plan cuts, because one wrong break could destroy years of labor. Copper tools were useful for softer stones and detailed work. Against harder granite, they worked alongside pounding stones and patient, repeated impact. Stone pounders broke down stubborn surfaces, while abrasive sand helped craftsmen grind and polish. Progress came through endurance rather than a single dramatic machine. Wooden sledges, levers, rollers, and frames helped distribute weight. Simple equipment became powerful when designed around balance, friction, and coordinated movement. Ropes connected human effort to stone. Teams pulled in rhythm, responding to shouted commands while supervisors kept hundreds of movements synchronized. The process unfolded in stages: cut the block, shape the figure, and move it toward the temple. Each stage demanded planning long before the final carving. The hidden technology was organization. Food, tools, transport, specialists, supervisors, and laborers had to function together across months or years. Now compare a normal human with a colossal statue. The difference is not merely height, it is the distance between living scale and symbolic scale. Modern visitors gather at the feet of Ramesses and Memnon. Cameras record the scene, but the body still feels the original shock of scale. When later generations encountered these monuments, could they have imagined that such enormous figures represented people who were themselves gigantic? Imagine an ancient traveler entering an abandoned Egyptian temple thousands of years ago, with its builders forgotten and its inscriptions partly unreadable. Without context, a statue loses its original explanation. The traveler sees enormous bodies, empty courts, and weathered faces, but not the intentions that shaped them. Forgotten monuments can inspire legends because people naturally search for causes. If ordinary builders seem impossible, extraordinary builders begin to enter the story. Imagine seeing a gigantic statue without knowing who built it, why it was built, or what it represented. To an ancient traveler, such a monument could easily become the beginning of a legend. But monumental scale should not be mistaken for biography. Colossal statues express authority and sacred meaning. They do not prove that their rulers were physically gigantic. Stone can survive the language, rituals, and political world that gave it meaning, leaving later observers with evidence but incomplete answers. Thousands of years separate the original builders from modern visitors. Yet the statues still perform their ancient function, making power feel larger than life. At dusk, the figures seem to dissolve into desert dust. Their outlines remain visible, while the people who carved them retreat deeper into history. Archaeology explains materials, labor, belief, and political purpose. Legend begins where evidence becomes difficult to read, especially when the surviving monument feels impossible. The colossi of Memnon and the statues of Ramesses do not need literal giants to be extraordinary. Human coordination made the impossible visible in stone. And there is another connection that has fascinated generations: the ancient stories of giant beings outside Egypt.